Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order, and it is the July 16th meeting of the Governing Board of the Habitat Agency. And even though we don't have it on the schedule, Mr. Sullivan, we're going to ask if there's any questions, any public comment that wishes to be made. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 1, which is the Army Corps of Engineers funding assurance letter for the Clara County Park and Wetland Restoration Project. Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, and I'll give you a little background on that. So we're coming before the governing board. This is something that the Army Corps is requesting, that we can demonstrate to them that we are budgeting enough money to do the design, which we're at 95% design, the construction, and the short-term and long-term management and monitoring of the site. And the reason why we're asking, the reason why they're asking for this is part of the Clean Water Act and their rules of the RGP, and us requesting that they grant us advanced mitigation credit for this project. So by restoring that wetland and creating habitat at the pond and restoring habitat at the pond, this will help with applicants being able to utilize the RGP. Because the way that's set up, it's sort of like the habitat plan. You got to have that jump start and stay ahead provisions.
Thank you. And welcome, Member Herrera. You heard the first word of this meeting as you walked in the door. We had no public comment, and we have no speakers for this item. So I'll look for a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you for explaining what that letter of assurance was. Item number 2 is the fiscal year budget for 2016-17. Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, so we're before the governing board today to have the governing board adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 16-17 budget. And I'll just go over some budget highlights. Estimated revenues, and these are from mitigation fees, are estimated to be at $11,080,000. We're guesstimating that we can get up to $8 million in grants, with total estimated revenues at $19,880,000. Estimated expenditures are approximately anticipated to be $3,667,377. The Habitat Agency is expected to have a budget surplus of $384,995 after at the end of the fiscal year, and we'll be set aside $12 million will be allocated for land acquisition funds. So that's where most of the $19 million will go, is towards land acquisition. And we will be adding another staff person, which we expect to start in the next 2 to 4 months. And the cost is reflected in the administrative support grant services office staffing line in the budget workshop, or excuse me, the budget guidebook.
Super. Thank you for that. Again, anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll turn to our members for questions of Mr. Sullivan. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The grant, is that a conservative number? Because that's almost half of what our balance is going to be.
Yes, it's. I wouldn't call it conservative. No.
So you think we might get more?
Potentially, because there's this. The water district has set aside $8 million to help with habitat plan implementation, and in particular acquisition. And it's through, even though it's set up for us, we still got to apply for the money. They vet it and see if it fits the criteria that helps them with their needs per the habitat plan. So I've had preliminary discussions with them of somewhere in the $3 to $5 million range for this next fiscal year of that pot. And given the interest of several large landowners, now's kind of the time. The iron's hot now to tap into that. Then we're expecting $2 million from Section 6. That's a federal program through the ESA. And then we're also, through the Wildlife Conservation Board, they have suggested that they would match whatever Section 6 monies we get. So that's kind of where we come in with that estimate. And then a few other like research grants and potentially some money from the Bureau of Reclamation. So that's where we come up with that number.
So maybe over 9 million probably.
Yeah, correct. If the planets line up, everything goes well, yep, 8 to 10, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just a follow-up on the question regarding the grants. I'm glad to hear that's a realistic number in your opinion at this point. Mm-hmm. Going forward, year over year, do you anticipate those kinds of dollars coming in, or is it more one-time?
The water district's one time, absolutely, but Section 6, yes. God willing, and the creek don't rise. Yes.
We need the creek to rise,
Yes.
but that's
That's
another.
Although here in Morgan Hill, not too high.
Yeah.
Because we are still in the flood zone.
A lot of 10-year events, so that's what we go for.
Okay, so
Avoid
half
the 100-year
those
events.
dollars are water district numbers, which you're
Yeah.
saying is a one-time.
Correct.
But still, do you have any forecast? If I asked you for a 3-year forecast, would you project $2 to $4 million here
Yes.
as realistic?
Yes, and then there's the whole foundation world, which is we haven't tapped into yet. OSA, for the Coyote Ridge property, OSA was able to get the Moore Foundation to contribute $1 million towards that acquisition. So that's an untapped resource for us.
With your staff growing, the 2, 3, 4 members in the next 3 to 4 months, do you anticipate that being one of the responsibilities?
Yes.
For a staff member,
Yeah,
whichever
it
that
would,
may be?
at least initially for me to meet with the foundation directors and deputy directors and sort of build that relationship with them. And then some of the grant writing being done in-house, yes.
Right, because grant funding for what the Habitat Conservation Plan does as compared to relying on economy boom, people building and funds coming in is much more dependable. So
Absolutely.
that's great.
Yep.
Any other questions? If none, I'll look for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
All right, we'll give that second to Member and Mayor Tate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Move on to item number 3, which is the Executive Officer Employment Agreement. And let me just flip over here. That'll be our attorney, Valerie.
Good afternoon. So the executive officer, Edmund Sullivan, has a 3-year agreement with the agency, which runs through June 30th, 2018. The implementation board did its evaluation of him and concurred that we should adhere to the agreement that calls for a 3% annual salary increase, and the implementation board also thought that he merited a 2% bonus based on the 2015-2016 fiscal year. So this is before you with the recommendation of the implementation board to approve the funding of the second year of his contract.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any members of the public have any comments or questions? Seeing none, turn to committee members. And thank you, Mr. Armento, as far as the report that was done up. It's always important because in our world, total costs include whatever benefits and compensations or vacation or sick or auto or whatever else it may be. And it's always important to me to distinguish what is salary versus what are the other costs incurred, just for full transparency to the public. So I appreciate the detail in this report. Commissioners, any question or a motion to approve the salary increase?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second. And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. We now move on to item number 4, Executive Officer's Report. Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, and I guess we could start out with the July canceling, whether to cancel the July
All in favor?
IB. First, I'll have Valerie, and both of us can engage you on the one item that is time sensitive for that meeting, and see if there's a a workaround on that.
So the one time-sensitive item for the July meeting is the contract for the Clara County restoration work. The governing board and the implementation board have all previously acknowledged that they want to see this project go through.
Thank you. If I may interrupt for a minute, the meeting we're talking about, for those of you that are here today and on the implementation board, is July 21st at 3 p.m. Thank you. Please continue.
So all the significant board actions have lined up in terms of getting this work done, but the actual amount of the construction work exceeds the executive officer's authority, which is the reason that we would be bringing it to the governing board. If the governing board feels comfortable, because we need to get the project started in a timely fashion because of the anticipated hopeful winter rains, et cetera, if the governing board feels comfortable in retroactively approving the contract, then we could bring it to the next official meeting. But that's really the issue.
Okay, and can you give us the dollar amounts in question?
Yes, we're estimating the construction itself to be no more than $300,000. Total project cost no more than $550,000. So that would include the monitoring, the 5-year monitoring, as well as contingency in case there's some cost overruns.
Okay, and how many people here, I'm looking at the signs, looks like Rose, Rich, Kat, and myself are on the implementation board. Members Smitty and Tate are not. Also, I assume with proper notice and all, members of the implementation board can report in by phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's
as it
correct.
occasionally happens here, so we can do that. Members, implementation board members especially, any thoughts?
Well, my question is, what's the difference between your authority and what we're approving? Is
Big.
it the 200,000?
Yeah, mine's 50,000.
Oh, okay.
And on things like land acquisitions, it's $1 million, but this is for construction projects and professional services, it's 50. So it's way above that. We had the pre-bid meeting on Tuesday, and 12 firms showed up for it. We'll choose the most responsible lowest bidder, who has the technical wherewithal to do the project, but is also cost effective. But yeah, it way exceeds my authority.
Okay, well, I think maybe the prudent thing to do would be to take a, whatever you call it, survey, to find out who's available at that time. For myself, I've got a Hewlett meeting in the morning, so I will be available on that day. You can put me down. I understand there's a couple of other members that know they're not available on that date, or maybe want to look at their calendar. But if it's okay with our board here to, governing board, to give direction regarding the implementation board, I'd suggest an email survey to see who's available and to see if we have a quorum. And in that survey, please include the option of teleconferencing in order to vote. Do you anticipate anything more on that agenda?
The other things could get moved. We were going to have ICF give you a presentation on their proposal for outreach strategy.
Okay, but that,
yeah,
the bid item's the only one that's time sensitive?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So we can move other things to September.
And that could be done, 10 minutes max, probably.
Right. Understood. Governing board members, is that acceptable?
Yes.
To use a recommendation?
Need a motion or anything?
Okay. Let's have a motion. That'd be my motion.
So, and that is for the July.
21st at 3 p.m. meeting
So
to occur. The implementation board only. It's not governing board.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to survey the information board to have a telephonic meeting.
Survey the implementation board to see who can attend and tell them that an option is to come down here to lovely Morgan Hill, even though it's in the flood.
Or they can check in. They can do this through telephone if
And they
they.
can teleconference in for
Right.
what's expected to be a one-item
One-item
meeting that is
meeting.
time sensitive.
Correct. And the only caveat with the telephone meetings is that the site has to be open to the public and we agendize
door
it.
open,
Yep.
that type of thing. I think we're
Yeah.
all
But
familiar.
really, we're not really changing anything. We're just apprising people that they can go the route of telephoning in if they do take the right steps.
Which is always the option they have
It's always the
anyway.
option anyway, so it's really, we're not even really need a motion, really, other than surveying the members, which I don't know, we
Yeah,
can make a motion, but we're not really doing anything.
but I think,
To survey the members, we can do that.
I think it's important, though, to make it clear to the implementation board members that we have a time-sensitive item
Mm-hmm.
that exceeds our executive director's ability. So I think this is a way of saying we need
I'm
this
happy to make
meeting
the motion,
to
but
occur.
but we're keeping the meetings the same. We're just going to survey the implementation
Yes.
board members to let them know about the criticality of the agenda item and that they can,
And if for
either
some
come here
reason we
or-
don't have a quorum responding to that, okay, who's our chair? Okay. I think then that you should ask Linda to inform each of those that cannot attend to see if they can be available for a short vote, whatever we need for quorum.
We'll have Linda send an email to them also.
Because I think
Okay.
it's more appropriate to be the chair of the implementation board than
Yes.
the chair for the implementation
Right.
meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
and I would just say, make sure they know how many days they have to, because there's certain notice, right, before you can
The 3 business
attend
days.
telephonically. So
Correct.
that's the
We would
important thing
have to
let them know.
have the information so that it could be properly posted. That's where we need to know sooner as opposed to later.
Okay. Perhaps you could all work together to make sure that the email that goes out is complete.
Certainly.
Does that work? Okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay. And moving that meeting to August would be too late. That's correct?
Correct.
Correct. Well, construction has to start September 1st.
But dewatering needs to start in August.
Yeah, we are going to have county parks do the dewatering for us. So we're able to get county parks to do that task for us. But the contractor would still, if we did it in early August, then it's possible because the contractor would need time to do staging of the equipment and to be prepared for September 1st start time.
But then Valerie,
Yeah.
please don't let me go off line in an inappropriate way here. We have 4 members of the implementation board here. This is not an implementation board meeting. I don't recall how many are on the implementation board, if we have a quorum here or not. So please keep me in line as far as what's appropriate. The other alternative, I think you said, was to give approval and do it retroactive at the August meeting. Was an alternative. Do we have the ability here, if it's the will of the implementation board members, to make that decision? That seems a little awkward.
So I wasn't thinking of it in terms of making an actual decision so much as an indication of a comfort level, because you can't make a decision since it's not been on the agenda and it's not really properly before you.
Okay.
But there are instances where, for various and sundry reasons, if there's a time-critical need, the executive officer or the head of whatever the entity is will enter into a contract and then seek retroactive approval.
Okay.
I
I just
don't
feel
know.
strange at
We-
the
we've-
governing board meeting making that decision for the implementation board. If you could give me some guidance.
Okay, I didn't hear all of that.
Well, this is the governing board meeting,
Correct,
and we're talking about having the implementation board do something.
correct.
And do we have that ability as the governing board to give direction to the implementation board?
The governing board, I think, always has the ability to give direction to the implementation board. The other thing is the governing board does, under the structure of the Habitat Plan, have ultimate authority with regard to all financial decisions.
Okay. Okay. So I'll turn back to implementation. No, I'll turn back to everyone, actually, here. Everybody here, then, on the governing board, to see what the comfort level
So
is.
my question also is, oftentimes we don't have a quorum. What do you do then? I mean, the possibility of not having a quorum, I don't know, and a lot of agencies go dark in July, so the possibility of not having a quorum anyway, that's why we're going to do the email survey, but
Which again is why in some instances,
And I think it's perfectly
if it's
okay.
not anticipated that there really are any objections to moving forward, and it doesn't appear to be in this case because both boards are very interested in seeing the Calero project move forward, if there is a general sense that there would be a willingness to retroactively approve any contract entered into by the executive officer, understanding that it does in fact exceed his authority, that is something that occasionally does occur.
We have a quorum present here of the governing board, and we have that authority to do so.
I believe so because you have ultimate authority with regard to all financial matters.
Okay. I'll look for another motion if someone wishes to entertain
Well,
So-
that authority, and giving retroactive authority is what we're talking about.
Well, I don't think you can give retroactive
the
authority in
retroactive part of it.
advance. The idea is that if we came back in August, if we're unsuccessful in July and we came back in August,
September.
or September,
September.
that there would be at least some comfort level among the board members, whether it's the governing board or the implementation board, to retroactively approve the contract,
Okay?
or retroactively approve his entering into the contract.
Because the meeting after July will be a governing board and implementation board, and it'll be September 15th. Yes.
So are
Member
we
Herrera.
retroactively, or are we just giving authority for him to have a higher amount to enter into pending subsequent approval?
So I don't think you can actually do that because it's not on the agenda.
And,
Do anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay. I'm just trying to find a way not to do retroactively.
Well, hopefully we won't have to. Hopefully
Well-
that we'll get all that taken care of, and we'll have a July meeting, we'll have people
Right.
on the phone, and
So,
then I'll be done.
so let me rephrase. Consider it ratifying any action.
That's
that
what I'm
he
trying
takes.
to, yeah, I'm trying to get to ratification instead of.
Ratify.
Okay. I like that better.
Okay, so where are we at?
So I think the prudent course of action is to proceed as was originally discussed, with checking with the implementation board members about their availability and/or at least willingness to participate in a very short phone call meeting.
Okay? And if that doesn't work
And if
out,
that doesn't work,
could be canceled.
the meeting could be canceled and we could proceed to have a ratification at a subsequent meeting.
Fine. Is that fine with the motion maker amending?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we're going to, and I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? None. That'll be our course of, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed? None. That'll be our course of action then. Thank you for that clarification. And what else, Mr. Sullivan, in your report?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on the endowment investment. So the overall status is we have completely evaluated, we've done an evaluation of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and we are comfortable with their investment strategy and the due diligence done by myself and Valerie and Bob Spencer of Urban Economics, that we feel it's a viable choice to invest the endowment. We've partially completed an evaluation of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, pending identification of preferred account management option, nonprofit investment fund versus an endowment fund. So to do, in our mind, the preferred of those two options for Silicon Valley, it would be the nonprofit investment fund. So we would need to set up a 501c3, and that would allow us to own the mitigation fund, and that 501c3 could invest the fund through a nonprofit investment fund agreement at Silicon Valley Community Foundation. We like the intangibles of being able to invest in Silicon Valley Community Foundation. They're local. NIFWIF is out of Washington, though they do have a San Francisco office. And we also like that they do a lot of investment in charities and good projects locally. And it would allow us to become, this organization to become sort of part of the community that way. And when we attend investment meetings, it would allow myself or a representative of the agency to meet important people in the region.
Present company excluded.
And exactly. And then we're I was talking about foundation, the local foundations, and a lot of them invest their money, whether it's Google or Facebook, and to be able to have access to those people, some of who like to invest in environmental projects, I think would be good PR and good exposure for the agency.
So, Mr. Sullivan, is the ultimate goal of your recommendation to make it so that to encourage others to invest in our agency and it'd be a tax-deductible donation? Is that?
No, it would just be, so we would just invest so we'd have to set up a separate 501c3 board, which the governing board would be involved in helping with choosing the members of that board. It would just be for the investment of our endowment for the Habitat Plan and any other monies we would, endowment type monies that we would be investing for partner organizations that are collaborating with us on land management activities. For instance, if PG&E partners with us on one of these properties we're hoping to acquire, they would have to set up an endowment for the acreage that they buy. We could potentially invest their endowment with our endowment. And VTA has approached us about some property they have and an endowment they have that's earning terrible returns. If we could be the trustee of that endowment, I don't know where that's going to go, but that's some preliminary discussion. So that money also could be invested, whether it was with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation or Silicon Valley Community Foundation. The nice thing about the Silicon Valley Community Foundation are those intangibles that I described before. Both organizations have similar returns on investment. The cap rates are similar. So it's more at this point finishing our due diligence and then coming back to the governing board in September with a recommendation and requesting an action from the governing board on how to invest the endowment, yes, and whether we should set up a 501c3 or not.
Okay, yeah. And again, anyone in the audience wish to speak on item 4, anything on the executive officer's report? Seeing none. Member Herrera.
I just want just a bit more on the 501c3. So part of the question of whether we set one up would be, one of their responsibilities would be to manage the endowment and make these kind of decisions. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
What other responsibilities would they have?
Well, I guess, and this is what Chairman Wasserman was sort of alluding to, I guess we could receive donations also. I don't see why that couldn't be an option. Yep. But no other responsibilities, no. Maybe, well, I take it back. There's some grants that are available just for nonprofits, so we could apply for those funds. Yeah.
True.
Yep.
I was trying to see what the flip side was of not creating this. Yeah. Where that left us. I have to admit, I never envisioned going down this particular street when we created the habitat, or that as a need. And the idea of risking any dollars we have is of concern to me. All of us are in government, and we are very conservative with the public's monies. So that concerned me. That's why I was.
Oh yeah. So it still would be invested through the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
No, you did. I just wondered why we're going down this road.
This gives us
Is it a requirement? I guess that's what I wanted
it gives
to
us more control over the money, because if we go the route of the endowment fund, we give it to them and it's theirs forever. So if we didn't like how they were investing the money, I mean, we could always pull out at a later date and say, we're not going to invest any more money in you. But there's a question, if we'd have invested $50 million already, how much control we would have over that. So they offer this option to a lot of nonprofits that you have more control over your endowment. All the fiduciary and sort of investment strategy would be managed by them, and the 501c3 would sort of act as the trustee with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation as the investment advisor. Yeah.
So this is going to come back to the board for some decision-making. So I would request at that time that it be sort of a small study session in a way to present the options so that we can understand it. It reminds me of sitting on the retirement boards when we're trying to look at investments and everything. I think we're sort of getting a little sliver, and I think we need to have a better perspective on what we're actually looking at, what the options are, and what are the pros and cons of the 501c3. It sounds like we need to have them if we're going to work with the Silicon Valley Foundation. Maybe I'm interpreting that wrong. But let's get an understanding of when we need them, when we don't, what are the various options, what kind of returns, all of that. I think we need to understand that as a board.
Okay, yeah, no, we can do that. That's part of why I wanted to bring this up to you today, to see. Bob Spencer will be giving a presentation in September. We can turn it into a board workshop or study session.
Thank you. And my question is more fundamental. I think the Silicon Valley Community Foundation is a wonderful organization. I'm just comparing doing that versus nothing. And I just need to understand how, if we have the money in our own accounts, we certainly have control.
We need all the options.
That's what I need to understand. Not only receiving the options, as was said, but if we don't do anything,
that's one of the options.
What that prohibits us from doing.
Yes.
That's one of the options.
Yeah, and one of the options, the not doing anything is that the...
Pros and cons of each is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Please continue.
So just wanted to give you an update on the Clean Water Act Section 401 permit integration, and we will be submitting to the regional water quality boards a revised set of proposed 401 conditions to our regional general permit 18 next week, and we'll see how it goes. The regional boards around here are, we all know, so so we'll see how they respond to this, and if it doesn't go well, then we're going to take our case to the state board. Clara, we've talked about, just wanted to update you on something that's happening at the state level. Assembly Bill 2444, it's Garcia, he's a representative from Southern California, and there's a park bond that's possibly going to be on the November ballot. They're getting bipartisan support for it, and we have, through our lobbyists and our coalition partners, there will be funding, line item funding for NCCPs within that park bond. Right now, they're talking about anywhere from 50 to 200 million, and also additional money for the Wildlife Conservation Board, which, as I mentioned earlier, they could match that Section 6 grant, so that could be money just for land acquisitions in general. So that's good news. And negotiations are continuing with Lamont, Richmond, and the UTC Pratt & Whitney, the rest of their holdings on Metcalf Road there. So, and that's it.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to adjournment. Our upcoming meeting for the governing board will be a joint meeting of governing implementation. It will be Thursday, September 15th. I'm assuming at this time in this location? Okay, it'll be at this time and at this location. And I want to thank Mayor Tate. Meeting adjourned.
There you go.
I did it.
The 21st joint meeting as well?
I haven't seen you in a long time.
That's
How are you?
only